This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale, and well, Arizona had a bye week, so hey, at least things were positive, Shane, until Saturday night. Do we have hope at least? Do we have hope?
Well, first of all, do you, as a whole Saturday, do you enjoy college football a little bit more when you don't have to sweat out what happens to Arizona?
All right, this is kind of a weird answer. Actually, no, I don't.
Okay.
I enjoyed watching the games, don't get me wrong. But I enjoy an Arizona game. I enjoy going to the games.
Yeah.
But I don't enjoy certain times of the day, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
I did not enjoy Saturday's games as much as I would, knowing that Arizona was playing an opponent that's decent and winnable. How about that?
No, and that's fair. That's fair. No, I enjoy football more when my team's playing. It's just sometimes they're especially coming off a loss. It's nice just to kind of, I feel like, catch your breath a little bit and watch other teams and other fan bases have to suffer. But no, I'm with you. The best thing is when your team wins wins earlier, which doesn't happen often for Arizona fans, or like on a Friday, and then you just get to enjoy knowing your team has a win in the bank. Didn't enjoy that against K-State, but we got one more opportunity for that this week. But no, glad to talk about Arizona football, even though it's a challenging week to say the least.
Yeah, challenging week. Well, we will have the voice of the Wildcats, Brian Jeffries, join us in the second segment, and our buddy Mike Kintner from Harrah's Auction Casino, the general manager, will join us to make picks on Arizona, Utah, and other games in the third segment. But let's get right to it. First of all, before we get to buy or sell, it is time for Shane's standouts. What do you have for us this week?
All right, as I'm trying to fumbling for the mute button there. All right, so yeah, a lot of lady female student athletes to talk about. Arizona volleyball won a perfect 11-0 in non-conference play. They closed out the Wildcat Classic by sweeping Southern Utah in 3 sets last weekend. Carly Cisneros, Jalen Hodge, and Avery Scoggins were named to the Wildcat Classic All-Tournament team. Then Avery, I believe, was named the Big 12 Freshman of the Week. So Coach Stubbs' team keeps on rolling. They opened Big 12 play Wednesday night at Baylor and then play at TCU on Friday night. So a very great start to the season for the volleyball team. Soccer team went 1-1 in Big 12 play last week. I want to shout out Gianna Christensen, who scored Arizona's first ever goal in a Big 12 matchup in their 1-0 win at Baylor last Thursday. Also, goalkeeper Olivia Ramey. She stopped 9 of 10 shots in those 2 games. Big shoes to fill, taking over for Hope Heisey. So shout out to her as well. And then finally, women's golf. Carolina Melgrati from Milan, Italy, finished tied for 5th in the individual standings in the Mason Rudolph Championship in Tennessee over the weekend. It is her second straight top 5 finish after finishing 2nd at the Folds of Honor Collegiate, and Arizona finished 4th out of 17 teams in the tournament. So a very nice showing from the ladies, and that is what I have for Shane Standouts.
Very nice. Okay, and now it is time for Buy or Sell, which is presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. Go to iceshaker.com, use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C, and get $5 off your first purchase. After you do that, make sure to fill out the post-purchase survey and mention Wildcat Country, and we will be most grateful. All right, number one, Shane, we should be worried about the revenge factor on Saturday, as a blowout would crush Arizona's hopes for the rest of the season. Buy or sell?
Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by the word hopes. Hopes for, let's just back up for a second, and let's say that we were as hopeful as we were when the season started that Arizona could win the Big 12. I know we're a lot less hopeful now collectively. I think we both are, and the fan base is as well, and for understandable reasons. But as far as a blowout, I mean, just a loss in itself, you think about the math behind it. if you're going to play in the Big 12 championship game, if you're undefeated, you're definitely going to play in it. If you lose one game, you almost definitely will. You lose two games, you're probably going to have to win some tiebreakers to get in there. And if Arizona loses its first Big 12 game, which it is, they play Kansas State, but that was technically not a Big 12 matchup, then you're looking at probably having to run the table just to get in the Big 12 championship game. So from that standpoint, it's the hopes of getting to the Big 12 championship game are definitely lessened. As far as a blowout, I think I'm with most Wildcat fans. I think that we just want to see some improvement this week. We want to see some things come together. We want to see the offensive line stay healthy and play a full game. We want to see fewer missed tackles. We want to see fewer penalties. We want to see a turnover generated or two. And if I think that if we see more of the same that we saw at Kansas State, especially coming after out of a bye week, I think that the morale in the fan base is only going to continue to worsen. I think if we see a closer game, then I think we're starting to feel a little bit better about the season and thinking, okay, probably not Big 12 champs, but maybe a winning season and a bowl game is possible. So again, it depends on the definition of hopes. Hopes for winning the Big 12, regardless of how you lose, that's probably close to out the window already, unfortunately. But then hopes for just for the reason I mentioned, though, because look, Arizona won 7 games to end last season, 6 Pac-12 games to end last season. They'd have to improve upon that.
The first game, the Kansas State game, didn't count. So I'm
talking about if they lost to Utah.
Well, right, but still, you're 0-1.
I know,
and then you still have 8 games to go.
But like I said, you probably still have to run the table if you want to get to the Big 12 championship game.
I mean,
or you have to win some tiebreakers. And considering Arizona's strength of schedule, that's not likely if you finish 7-2.
All right, but here's the thing. I'm just going to play hypothetical. You've got Oklahoma State and Kansas State that are playing this weekend, both at 0-1, which is the best case scenario for Arizona. If Utah, let's say, runs the table or thereabouts and goes 12-0, 11-1, something like that, they're going to get in to the championship game. You've got Kansas State and Oklahoma State, who already will have 2 losses after this week, likely not going to run the table from there. So one of those teams is going to be out automatically, and those were 2 of the biggest contenders, right? Like, I think you and I both, one of us had Oklahoma State, one had Kansas State, I believe.
I didn't have Kansas State. I had Utah and Oklahoma State finishing 1-2.
And I think I had Kansas State and Utah. I believe I did. Okay, so that's one of them. Now, Iowa State is a threat. Outside of that, which team are you really scared of in this conference?
And I don't mean this as a cop-out, but honestly, I haven't thought about it too much because I don't see Arizona as a Big 12 championship contender at this point. But yeah, I agree with you. I agree. I mean, the Big 12 already seems like it's on its way to cannibalizing itself, just like the Pac-12 likes to do. Not as big a deal now with 12 teams getting into the postseason. But no, I don't think that they're outside of Utah. I have not seen an elite team. I mean, Texas Tech, I know that they beat ASU, which was undefeated. Texas Tech barely got past Abilene Christian. Kansas is off to a slow start. West Virginia, which I was big on before the season started, has not looked very good, even though they had to come from behind win last weekend. So, I agree with you. It's just someone's going to rise to the top. There's 16 teams just by sheer odds of it all. So there's going to be another team up there that at least goes 7-2 in conference play, maybe not 8-1. But I think that, look, if Arizona, I'll try to summarize this. If Arizona looks better at Utah, at least they put up a fight, and this is more the Arizona team we expected. Then they come home and they beat Texas Tech, then maybe we can start talking about this a little more. But until then, I don't even want to get into that discussion. My hopes right now, Eric, is Arizona finishes with a winning record, because I think that is realistic best case scenario at this point. But again, it changes week to week, and if Arizona either beats or puts up a good showing at Utah, then maybe that changes.
Watch out for UCF. Their schedule is pretty favorable. They held on against TCU when TCU missed a field goal at home. Their toughest game at Iowa State. They also play at ASU, at West Virginia, and Utah at home to close the year. But I think that team is very dangerous. Honestly, if you were to ask me to pick a team outside of Utah, I'd say probably UCF right now. And I think somebody gets in with 2 losses. Now, I agree with you, Shane, that I don't think Arizona is a legitimate contender right now.
Yeah.
With that said, I'm going to sell about the revenge factor. I think that narrative is BS. And number 2, I think a blowout would not crush Arizona's hopes. I think a loss to Texas Tech next week That's when the real season starts. I'll say it over and over on this show, Shane. That's what it comes down to. You have to win next week. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have to win next week.
I agree with you. I think that is a game they have to win if you're going to turn the season around. But yeah, I didn't answer the question about the revenge factor, which you're alluding to. Jetfish having Jaden DeLora throw a late touchdown at Utah or at home against Utah last year, which was a game we both enjoyed in the rain on and off. It was a fun game to watch. But again, if Utah, I don't think Utah really. I feel like sometimes, like you talk about the Baltimore materials, sort of like a crutch. Like, okay, we're not as good as this team, so we need something. Utah doesn't need that. They're the better team. So I don't know how much that matters. I'm sure it's come up. I mean, their fans are already chirping about it on Twitter. I think they care about it a lot more than the players do. So I don't think that's going. It could be something where, late in the game, if Utah's up big and they decide to keep running up the score, then maybe you see some of that. I don't know if Kyle Whittingham's that kind of guy. But that'll be interesting to see if it comes to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not. Listen, Arizona last year in the 3 losses lost by, they were all single possession losses. I mean, they should have beaten USC, but they lost by a touchdown to Washington, and they lost by something thereabouts to Mississippi State.
Lost in overtime to Mississippi State.
Yeah. Yeah. And so losing to Kansas State, we're not used to. I mean, Arizona has not dealt with a multiple possession loss since November of 2022 before the Kansas State game.
True.
And so you want to see the line is 12.5 or thereabouts this week. It's kind of fluctuating too. It's kind of going in Arizona's direction a little bit. If the Wildcats stay within 1 possession, I would be very encouraged. If they do not, there'll be concerns, and we'll make our picks at the end. And maybe you guys, I don't know what Shane's thinking. He doesn't know what I'm thinking. I guess we'll find out at the end of the show.
What's your gut? Did you think Cam Rising's going to play this weekend?
No.
You don't think so?
No. I think Utah thinks they can win with this kid Wilson. And I think that's what I would be somewhat surprised if Cam Rising played. I think Cam Rising's time that they've gone on the road and won twice at Baylor and at Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
With Wilson, I believe.
Yeah. Well, they've done it with the running game. They've done it with defense, other than the last few minutes of the game against OK State. I mean, I turned that game off. I was shocked to see it was a 3-point game, but yeah, I was expecting to be thoroughly entertained from that game, and I ended up switching over to Michigan USC pretty quick.
Sorry, Baylor was a home game. So yeah, I mean, regardless, this is a team that for Utah. I mean, Wilson didn't play great against them, but he went on the road at Oklahoma State and played well, and I think they're confident. I would be surprised if we saw Cam Rising. Just kind of my take on it. All right, number 2, Shane. I'm kind of disappointed in Arizona's fan base for their reaction to the team post Kansas State. Are you going to buy or sell that narrative?
I'll sell in the sense that I'm glad at least we have some passionate fans. I mean, Arizona football fans are not Arizona basketball fans. I mean, you hear Arizona basketball fans regardless of where the Wildcats play. Football, it's a lot different. So I'm glad that fans are emotionally invested in Wildcat football again. A lot after what happened in 2020 and then 2021. I think that was really missing. No, not really. I roll my eyes a little bit about how fickle fans are. Just look, it is possible that Brent Brennan will not work out at Arizona. I still think he will. I can see that he might not, but we got to get a grip. I mean, approval ratings, you look at, the presidential election coming up, you look at approval ratings fluctuate among the candidates as much as they do. Coaches' approval ratings in football week by week. I mean, Brendan was probably at 90% before the season started, and now he's maybe like at 20%. So it changes so much week to week. I think that fans were disappointed. And again, I know I sound like a broken record, but I think Brent Brennan's sort of a victim of his own success by bringing back so many talented guys, and the expectations remained high. This was not a full rebuild. And I do think that some fans will say, well, look, there are some teams, including San Jose State, where they picked up right where they left off. I mean, San Jose State, they should have beaten Washington State, and they should still be undefeated under Ken Niumatalolo, of all people. And some other programs, and with a new head coach in year one, they get off to a great start, and some don't. And Arizona is the latter, and I think that's more the norm. So I don't think we can judge on whether Brent Brennan is the right guy yet. And I would say that we won't know until at least season 2. But I'm not disappointed. I'm a little annoyed, but at least we have a fan base that's invested in this program again.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy this one. I am disappointed. I think that as a fan base, Arizona fans are too fickle, and they jump off the bandwagon too quickly.
You think that's unique to Arizona?
I'm just speaking for Arizona fans. I'm not saying that it is.
Okay.
I'm just saying I'm disappointed.
All right.
I mean, this is if this team gets blown out this week, I understand it. But for a team that had the longest win streak in the country, scored first, obviously did not play a great final 3 quarters, but to say, oh, Brennan, we're already talking about Brent Brennan's job security. This is an insane conversation. Like, anybody that does that on a message board needs to get their head checked. It's one game. Now, it happens this weekend. You lose next weekend. I get it. But one stinking game. I understand they didn't play great against New Mexico and NAU, but they were 2-0. I mean, I think the people, social media is evil in certain cases.
Yeah,
it is. And this is one where it is. Nobody 30 years ago is saying, oh, Dick Tomey lost in his first year, one game. I think we have to talk about his job. Hold on. Let's see what he does the rest of the year. At the end of the year, if Arizona goes 5-7 or 4-8, we can have a legitimate discussion about this.
That's a fair point.
I think it's real.
That's a fair point. And Dick Tomey was not successful right away at Arizona. I mean, he took over after Larry Smith left, and that left a bad taste in fans' mouths. And he had a pretty average first season, including the tie against ASU, which felt like a win because of the way it ended. But that was the first time in 6 years that Arizona didn't beat ASU. They won the next 3 after that. But yeah, it takes a while. And I think especially with social media, I remember something that Jake Plummer said to me years ago when I was writing my book about the rivalry, and he said, if I played today, and this was like I told him just like back in 2011, but still relevant. He said, if I played today, I would never have gotten to my senior year as a starting quarterback because fans would have been calling for my head because he wasn't very good his freshman year at ASU, and he wasn't great he was okay his next 2 years, and then his senior year he was invited to the Heisman ceremony. So I know how Arizona fans feel about Jake Plummer. I'm just saying that social media is really shortened everyone's attention spans in a number of ways, including just the need for instant gratification. And that includes sports. And it takes a while to build a program. Sometimes things come together right away, and sometimes it takes time. And this is, if it works at Arizona, it looks like it's probably going to be the latter. And that's okay. I think, again, fans we're in a little bit of a state of mourning, just mourning the fact that, okay, the Jedfish vibes, the Jedfish era is over. This is a new era, and we're going to have to start over to a certain extent. And again, I would rather fans be upset than not care. With that said, I do agree with you that the overreaction is annoying.
All right. So here's something that I thought about this week. You leave your job for a new job. You're taking over for somebody else who was in that job before. Does your new employer expect you to be as good, if not better, right away, than somebody that already knew what they were doing? And you can say, well, coaching is different because sure, I have the skills, but I can go to another job and I'm not going to be as good right away. In time, sure. So for us to think that Brent Brennan was going to come in there at losing some players that were key and succeed like Jedfish did, I think in hindsight, and I feel guilty about it, wrong. And I know that Teteroa McMillan is probably the most talented college receiver that has ever played at Arizona. And so expectations are there. At the same time, let's give the guy a break. Think about your career, whoever you are out there listening, and you move to a different job. What are your expectations right away? What are your expectations in the first 4 months? I can tell you at my current job and at any job that I've ever worked, in the first 4 months that I've been on the job, it's unrecognizable from when I look back on it a year later.
And that is a fair point. And I think that sometimes things do come together right away. But sometimes they don't. And they're, like I said, a new job, a new culture, a new location, a new coworkers, new subordinates, people under you. And it takes some time. Sometimes things click right. Someone noted that Rich Rodriguez won some games early at Arizona, the big win over Oklahoma State in his first year, and sometimes that happens. And I think Mike Stoops, he gifted Matt Scott and Kadeem Carey to him, which is perfect for Rich Rod's system. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it takes a while.
But that team, Shane, was 8-5.
Yeah,
and great, they beat Oklahoma State in game 2, and then in game 4, do you remember what happened? September 22nd, 2012. You remember the score of the Oregon game? It's 49-0.
Okay.
Oregon.
Yeah.
And then they lost to Oregon State, and then they lost to Stanford. So right there, you went to 3-3. He came back. They won 2 in a row, including beating number 10 USC the last time that Arizona beat USC. And then they went to UCLA, to the Rose Bowl. Final score on November 3rd, 66-10.
That's right. Yeah.
There were some lowlights there.
Right.
So as a fan base, and maybe I'm guilty of it for having the expectation. I should have said exactly when Jed Fish left, I should have said, all right, 7 wins max with this team. Anything more than that, great. Yeah. I think I know I was wrong in expecting too much, because I didn't look at it like that. Any first-year coach, you can't. Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, to expect him to go and contend for a national championship, I think is crazy.
And maybe they will, but it's not.
I'd be surprised.
But no, I agree with you. But my wife always reminds me. I kind of sum it up. Our frustrations are a product of our expectations, and our expectations were high for this team because so many players were coming back. And I can think about that for anything in my life. When I get frustrated, when I just get upset about something, it's like I expected something different. I expected something that didn't happen, or that I didn't expect something that did happen. And it's true here. If Fafita and McMillan and Tacario Davis and all those other guys had left, then we'd be okay with where Arizona's at right now. But they didn't. Brett Brennan and his staff were able to bring, to their credit, were able to bring them back, and they haven't been as successful, and that's why fans are getting upset. And I think the big picture is, look, this guy is great at building relationships. That's why these guys came back, and that's a good sign. That's important for recruiting going forward. And when Brent Brennan brings more of his own guys in, that's going to be important too. When he builds a culture at Arizona, and it takes time to build a culture, like you said, any job, including in football.
All right, number 3. All right, so they announced that Arizona's game against Texas Tech next week was scheduled for 8:00 on Fox.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, ASU got a 5:00 game on ESPN2. So buy one and sell one, Shane, for the fans and for the program itself. 8 p.m. on Fox, 5 p.m. on ESPN2. So a couple buys and a couple sells.
As far as like which slot would I rather? I would, regardless of the channel, unless it was Pac-12 Network, which you don't have to worry about.
No, you have to consider both. The channel is part of it.
No,
we know Fox has a lot bigger exposure than ESPN2.
No, I still buy. I'd buy the 5:00 start because you're going to get more eyeballs on the program. And plus, I think if you're just talking about, are we just talking about a TV slot here, or are we talking about big picture, including people who want to go to the game?
Both. There's two separate ones. Which is better for the program itself? So exposure, and which is better? I think we know the 5:00 is better for the fans. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. We're gonna buy the 5:00. Which one do you think is better for the program?
I think the earlier start would be better because you're talking about finishing a game at 3 a.m. on the East Coast.
Essentially.
So yeah, I think so. In terms of fan support too. I mean, imagine if Arizona gets his clock cleaned by Utah this weekend. How many fans do you think are going to be at that game against Texas Tech? At 8:00 start, and even if they win, I don't think it's going to be a sellout. But if they lose to Utah, they lose handily, and morale continues to drop. I think you might see below 40,000 people at that game. You combine, and I think that's as important to the program as anything, because a loud home field advantage can make a difference in winning and losing a football game. I mean, we've seen how that that helps Arizona win basketball games. It doesn't translate it over to football very well. And then in terms of the TV exposure, I think the earlier time slot, even on a so-called secondary network, is better than. And I don't look at the ratings, so maybe you know better than I do. But I would take the 5 p.m. slot over the 8 p.m. slot for TV reasons in terms of viewership, especially those on the East who want to watch a football game and before they fall asleep, and just for attendance, because an 8 p.m. start is brutal, especially for those like you who travel to every game from Scottsdale.
I cannot now for the fans. Obviously, the 5 o'clock is better. I cannot understand from a Fox point of view that having an 8 p.m. Pacific window, which is 9 p.m. Mountain and 11 p.m. on the East Coast, how that benefits anybody.
No,
I don't understand it. It just, to me, on a broadcast network, I mean, you're getting, I guess, people on the West Coast that are going to watch, I think, if it's a good game. But does anybody care about Arizona, Texas Tech outside of those two fan bases if the Wildcats lose this weekend? As you said, Shane, it is weird to me.
The only way
to have that time slot period.
The only way fans would care is if it was a top 15, top 20 matchup, which it's not. Arizona's not ranked anymore. Texas Tech's not ranked. So, I mean, if this was, continuing the Jetfish era and Arizona was undefeated going in, then maybe. But again, you got a game that starts at 11 p.m. Eastern time, which is where most of the fans are watching. That it's just, I don't care what network you put it on. If fans aren't awake, it's not going to make a damn bit of difference.
So Blair Willis, when I tweeted this out the other day, he said the late windows with more exclusivity draw a lot more eyeballs than the ESPN2 games on crowded earlier windows. What do you make of that?
Okay. I hadn't seen that. I would still, for TV purposes, look, if it works for whatever reason, that's great. But again, I still think, to me, I think 7 p.m. is the cutoff for these games. I mean, I know it's still hot in Arizona in September, early October. It's supposed to be like 96 degrees that day in Tucson. But if you want to, you're not doing Arizona any favors, the program any favors by having games on so late, when some fans are going to just decide, you know what, I wanted to go, I wanted to make the trip, but it's just too late for me. And the
difference is for basketball, like a 9 o'clock start for basketball, it's a 2-hour game, maybe 2:15 barring overtime. This game, with the offense likely to be in it, is 3.5 hours minimum. So the earliest that it's probably going to end is 11:30 Pacific, which is 2:30 a.m. Eastern. What percentage of the country is watching?
Yeah.
I mean, outside, unless you're a big gambler on it, I can assure you that I will not be hearing from anybody on the East Coast during that particular time.
Right. Well, and then for those in attendance too, you think about this. Okay, we'll say the game ends at 11:30, 11:45, and it's a close game. So most fans stuck around to the end. Then you got to file out of the stadium. Then you got to walk to your car. Then you got to wait until if you park in a parking garage until that clears out. So it's probably another hour before you even leave the area.
Not bad. It's not that bad.
But it can be. I mean, I guess if you got fewer people there, you don't have to worry about that.
I mean, here's the way I look at it. From the time that I leave the stadium to the time I get on the freeway is ideally half an hour or 40 minutes at most. At most.
Okay. Well,
if not shorter than that.
Well, what time do you expect? Because I'm sure you're going to go, because
I will be there.
You're a diehard. You go to every game, and more.
Yes.
And much credit to you for that. You're probably not going to get home until at least 2 a.m., right?
2 a.m. Yeah. And I have to drop, I'm going with 3 other people, and I'm going to drop each one of them off individually. So yeah, it's going to be a late night.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand. I hate it. I understand what Blair's saying. I hate it. I'm selling all the 8 p.m.s. You're right. 7 o'clock should be the cutoff. All right. Since we have Brian Jeffries coming up, I just wanted to throw out a little basketball one here. So did you see Luka Doncic came out and said that if he could have played college ball, he would have played at Arizona?
Yeah.
This has to help Arizona in some way going forward. We've seen what they've done with the graphics and such on social media. Do you buy or sell that, or do you think it's kind of irrelevant?
Can't hurt. I mean, I guess the question is it going to help them land one more recruit? I don't know. But it's going to make maybe some other people look at the program. It's always possible that and I don't know what goes through these kids' heads, but they're thinking about just some top programs to visit or look at as they go to college. And you hear a guy like Luka Doncic say, "I heard a lot of good things about Arizona." Like he said that without hesitation, Arizona. Then you think, okay, well, maybe I'll give them an extra look. So no, I think it's great for branding. I mean, like Arizona doesn't have a branding problem for basketball. I mean, this is a good thing. Don't get me wrong, but I think Arizona's brand is it's a program where the brand I think has been better. It's almost unfair to say, but a little better than the team, at least when you factor in the NCAA tournament, because Arizona hasn't been to the Final Four since 2001. But the brand I think is very, very strong. It's one of the best college basketball brands in the country. And so, but then when you have a guy like Luka Doncic who says that can only help. You throw it into a highlight reel, you milk it on social media. Is it going to help them land another top 10 or 20 recruit or a transfer? I don't know, but it's a good thing. It's good exposure for the program. And it's a reminder that Arizona is still a nationally recognized and respected brand. And for a guy who arguably is the best player in the NBA at the moment to say something like that.
Just going to say this. If I were Arizona now, you have to get him to a game at McHale Center at some point this year. That's a must.
Sure they'll try. I'm sure they'll try.
I mean, whatever it takes to get him there, give him his private jet, get him there. Give him to get him there, show him to the crowd, show him for a big game. And without looking at the schedule, Arizona has to have Luka Doncic there. As crazy as it sounds.
Well, the last thing I'll say, just because I like to be a Debbie Downer, is the irony is the Phoenix Suns had a chance, the in-state team had a chance to draft Doncic. Instead, they took the guy from Arizona, who's now in Portland. But I didn't have to say that, but I threw it in.
So Wildcat Country is presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. And hey, Wildcat fans, do you want to win a brand new car? It's time to play for your chance to drive one away. Harrah's Auction Casino is celebrating its 30th anniversary with the Win Your Wheels giveaway. This is your chance every month to win a new car. Just play your favorite slots at Harrah's Auction Casino using your Caesars Rewards card on the last Saturday of each month, which is this Saturday, to win your wheels. So you can watch Arizona, Utah, and potentially win a new car, because the more you play, the more entries you'll receive. Harrah's Auction Casino, play for all. We'll talk to Mike Kintner later on, but first, it's the voice of the Wildcats, Brian Jeffries, here on Wildcat Country.
When you're on the golf course and it's 100 degrees outside, you know what's great? The ice shaker, which keeps your water cold.
You heard the man. Get your custom Arizona Wildcats ice shaker now at iceshaker.com.
All right, Shane, the Wildcats are 2-1. Basketball season's on the horizon, and there's nobody better to join us this week than the voice of the Wildcats, Brian Jeffries. Brian, glad to have you on once again. Just your thoughts on what you've seen from the football team thus far. Would you say it's underwhelming, about what you expected, or maybe the play is a little bit better than you were anticipating?
I'm going to say about what I expected, guys. 2-1 after 3 games, and in particular, the loss coming to Kansas State on the road. I don't know how many people expected Arizona to go in there and win. I certainly thought that they would play better than they did after that opening drive, and even into the third quarter. I thought they had a great chance, and things just didn't work. And that's the disappointing part, is that the second half, after they stopped Kansas State on that opening drive of the third quarter, the Wildcats didn't have anything else going. The offense never got on track, and the defense didn't get on track. And only the coaches can tell you why. But I thought that they would probably play a lot closer game that we saw. But I wasn't shocked at the same time that they lost the game based on what Kansas State had going for it.
Hey, Brian, thanks again for joining us. We appreciate it as always. You gotten to know Brendan a little bit over the last few months. So you do the radio show on Mondays with him now. Do you think that he expected this team to be about where it is right now? And are you confident that he will be able to continue to get the team going and improve in areas where they need to improve?
I don't know any coach that would ever expect a loss. Let's put it that way. So I haven't asked him about what he expected out of his team at this point. I think that he's very optimistic about the talent they have on hand. I know after that loss, one of the things he said is all the problems are fixable. They went into a bye week, and I thought maybe it was too early to have a bye week, but he said the timing was great. They had some guys banged up, as every team does, and they had some things to fix. I think coming off a loss like that, you probably got the attention of the players a lot more, and that's what they worked on. Now the proof will be in the pudding, as they say. And we'll see what happens on Saturday up in Salt Lake City, which is not going to be easy at all. But you expect the guys to be pretty focused and learn from their mistakes and see if they can clean up some things.
Certain fans, Brian, at least on social media, and I hope you don't spend too much time there because I spend way too much time there. But they can be very fickle. When the team's doing well, coach is the greatest guy in the world. They love everything he does. When the team doesn't do well, it's knock this off and this is ridiculous. And I think there's this idea now that maybe Brent Brennan's just too nice a guy. He's not the guy who's going to light a fire under this team when things don't go well. And just in the time you've gotten to know him, do you feel like that's fair or unfair or to be determined?
Well, I've seen him in practice a few times, and I've seen the fire burning. There's no doubt about that. He doesn't like mistakes. He wants things to be as perfect as possible. He's angry about some of the things. I think penalties, one thing that he's really been harping on the guys a lot here, really since game one. So he is a nice guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I've seen the side of him that can get on the guys, and at the same time, I think that he is the type of coach that expects the players to police themselves in that area. And that's why he likes this group, because he thinks they have good chemistry, they have good leadership. And I think that stands out to me. I mean, I'm not involved 24/7 with these guys. I just see them from the sidelines, but I noticed that in practice that you've got some leaders on this team. And like I said, a year ago, Arizona was 3-3 after they lost at USC in double overtime, and people were wondering what's going to happen, and they roll off 7 straight wins after that. So it's the snapshot mentality that you take every game and you think it's the greatest thing or it's the end of the world. And I think you've got to let the season play out. You hope that the team continues to improve. I think they've got to get, and he admitted it, Coach Brennan said they've got to get some more guys involved, in particular on offense. And we'll see if they can do that this week, and that could help them a lot.
Brian, what's your take on, somebody mentioned to me that they see a lot of Dick Tomey in Brent Brennan. What similarities do you see?
Well, I think just the way that he handles his players. Dick was a very, I hate that cliche, but I got to use it. He was a player's coach. He was a guy that, would hug his players. He cared more about them than he probably did the wins and losses. And that shows when you take a look at, what has happened since then. The players that have come back, the players that have, pledged their allegiance not only to him but to the program. How many of them there, of course, were part of. I think that has a lot to do with his personality. He learned a lot from Dick Tomey, not only in his brief time at Arizona, but of course at San Jose State. So I see a lot of similarities, and I think he wants to be very, when you admire a guy like that, when he teaches you what he taught Coach Brennan, I think Brent, wants to be as much as he can like Dick Tomey, who was the winningest coach in Arizona football history, and what Brent did at San Jose State is pretty amazing. So you got to give guys time too. Again, it's part of our society that you want instant results, and I think that maybe unfair to this year's team. I was asked a lot before the season started, is this the most anticipated season since when? And just, the preseason polls are based on last year for every team. And so I think it was somewhat unfair to the current players and the current staff that they were expected to come in and just keep winning. And I'm not saying they're not going to win. They certainly can. But I'm of the mindset, you take them one game at a time and see what happens. Okay, you lost a game. Let's see what you can improve on the next game and maybe win that one and go from there.
So I wasn't around when Tomey was in his prime here, but I've heard this from people. I'm kind of curious as to your perspective on it. And again, it's too early to see if Brent Brennan is going to be this way. But the Dick Tomey, his teams when they were the underdogs, they rose up and played very well against the favorites. And then when they were big favorites, they weren't as good in that role. Would you say that's characteristic of how you perceive the Tomey years?
I know that the underdog mentality was certainly part of the program. I don't know if there was ever a time that they were favored in a game that things changed. I think that Coach Tomey wanted to keep that mentality all the time, be it a game you're favored in or a game you're favored against. He always kind of preached that, because Yeah, you look at the Arizona program, they had some great players. Okay, Teddy Bruschi, Rob Waldrop, we could go on and on about the great players that he recruited to Arizona. But if you look at the broad scope of it in the Pac-10 at that time, it was still USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon started to make its move, etc. You were always battling them in recruiting, and Arizona never had that number one class in recruiting, but and yet he was able to get more out of guys, I think, than a lot of coaches because the way he treated them and the way he taught them the mechanics of football, and a lot of it was between their ears, believing in themselves, and maybe working. How could I put it? Going beyond their own expectations instead of settling for what other people said about them. He instilled the attitude that, you're going to be as good as you want to be. And I think guys took that to heart, and that's why they were successful.
Brian, and actually, I was thinking about something that a couple players who played for Dick Tomey told me way back in the day, which is that Dick Tomey be the first guy to put a foot up your rear end and an arm around your shoulder. So, like, he would get on you, but he would also, care about your well-being, obviously. I'm kind of tired about talking about so many negative things about the football program when there's so much talent on this team. So talk about, Brian, a couple of guys on this team, not named Tetero McMillan, who have really impressed you in these first 3 games.
Well, I would just give you some groups. I think the defensive line has done a good job, considering they're basically all new up there. That was the biggest loss on this team, was the defensive front. And I think they've equipped themselves fairly well. Now they've got to play better. There's no doubt about that. And the offensive line, Noah Fafita's been sacked 3 times in 3 games. And, you lose a first-round draft pick as your left tackle. You lose your left guard because he's not going to play this season. And you've got some new guys in there. That second game against NAU, they were shorthanded big time on the offensive line. They got healthier against Kansas State, and I think they're going to be healthier this week. So I think the lines on both sides have probably exceeded my expectations, just in terms of groups. In terms of players, the guys that have probably stood out for me right now on offense would be Jeremiah Patterson, the transfer wide receiver, who I think they're going to get a lot more involved in the offense. They need to. The tight ends as a group, Kean Burnett had showed some really flashes of brilliance early on. They needed him to get the ball some more. And I think that's one thing they used the bye week was they've got to find a way to get the ball to other guys other than Tetero McMillan. Yes, he's your best player. He has to catch a lot of passes, but at the same time, there's some other guys on this team that I think can help a lot. And so that's kind of the way I look at it now. And we'll see. I've got a feeling that there's going to be a few new faces, not guys that haven't played yet, but some guys that have not played very much are going to see more of the field this week, simply because they're looking for that next guy up at certain positions.
Yeah, Brett Brennan alluded to that in his press conference on Monday as well, that you could see that you could reevaluate and possibly see some not necessarily new faces, but guys increase their playing time a little bit based on what they've seen so far. Quick scouting report on Utah, Brian. Arizona's a big underdog, obviously, going into Rice Eccles. It's a tough place to play. What does Arizona need to do to have a chance to win at Utah?
Well, it's no secret, Shane. They got to play a clean game. They cannot turn the ball over. They cannot commit penalties. They're averaging 9 penalties a game for 90 yards. There's no way they can win in Salt Lake City at Rice Eccles if they commit 9 penalties for 90 yards on Saturday night. They got to clean that up. They haven't had a big turnover problem, but in a game against a team like Utah, you simply can't turn the ball over. And they probably have to take advantage of every possession they have. Utah is very much like Kansas State, where they hold on to the ball. Last year, Utah led the nation in time of possession. They're only 4th best right now after 3 weeks, 4 weeks for them. And so that's easy to say is, okay, you got the ball, you got to make something of it. But in Arizona's case, if you're going to win on the road, you can't have too many empty possessions. You've got to take advantage of anything you've got. Last year, Arizona scored on the first 3 times they had the ball against Utah. Well, guess what? They went on to win the game. And I look back at it, of the 12 games these teams have played since Utah joined the Pac-12 at that time, the team that scored first has won 11 of those 12. Okay. And the only exception to that was 2016, when Arizona scored on the very first play of the game, and of course went on to lose in Salt Lake City. So you got to take advantage of every possession. And I know that's easy to say, but somehow the Wildcats have got to figure out how to do it.
All right, my last question for you, Brian. Utah fans are talking about the revenge factor because Jed ran up the score a little bit at the end of last year's game because he thought Kyle Whittingham was playing the game out too long. In your time at Arizona, have there been games over the years you can think of? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but just games you can think of where there's kind of been that payback factor from whether it's on Arizona's side or the opponent's side that you can think of?
Every Arizona ASU game. How about that? It's always going to be the same way. I'm going to defend last year a little bit. That was Jaden Delora's last game at Arizona Stadium. Yeah. He had already been, he'd been injured earlier, and Noah Fafita had taken over at quarterback, and Delora had lost his spot. So Jaden Delora meant a lot to Jed Fish because of what he'd gone through, the fact that he came to Arizona. He kind of became that first quarterback that got the program turned around. And so Jed wanted Jaden to have a chance on his last home game to get into the ball game. Now, in terms of throwing, a sideline pass for a touchdown, we can argue about that as long as you want. But I will defend Jed and Jaden for, the idea that they wanted to give him that one last chance to wear an Arizona uniform at Arizona Stadium. And I really don't think, you can do all the talking, and I'm sure it's bulletin board material in Salt Lake City, but you guys know this. As soon as that game starts, the players aren't going to be thinking about that. Maybe they can, get all revved up in the locker room, but once the game starts, that is not going to determine the outcome of the game. I think opposite that, if you put too much into thinking, hey, revenge factor, that can hurt you. So I don't think that's going to happen. Utah's too smart of a team, too good of a coach. They're going to approach this just like every other game. They're really, really good. There's a reason they're favored to win the Pac-12. And if Kansas State was the second best team in the league and Utah's the first, well, Utah's got a chance to maybe run the table.
Yeah, I wasn't overly impressed with Oklahoma State against Utah last week, nor Kansas State against BYU. All right, two more for you, Brian. First of all, basketball coming up soon. Red Blue games on the way. What do you know about this year's team, and what are your initial impressions?
I watched them a few times in practice, and they just got formal practices underway this week, but they had some of those limited workouts here the last few weeks. Caleb Love returning is huge. Probably will be their point guard, and that's not only going to help this year's Arizona team, but I think also help Caleb Love because he wants to play in the NBA, and I think that's what the scouts told him, that you need another year and you need to run point because that's going to be your position if you make it in the pros. Carter Bryant, the freshman, I think is the guy that really stands out to me in terms of the newcomers. I think he's going to have a place in this. This is just me talking right now. I think he's going to have a place in the starting lineup. I think KJ Lewis has a chance now to really blossom this year. Mo Krivas back now should be much better. Henry Vasar, who just sat out last year, another guy that gives them some size inside. Emmanuel Stephen, one of their other new guys, one of the freshmen, has, I think, a chance to, again, work into that rotation in the middle there. And they got some, they go to the portal like everybody does these days, and that might be the determining factor. Jaden Bradley's going to be a key guy once again. And so they've got 11 on scholarship, if memory serves me right. And I could see, again, Tommy's one of those guys that doesn't go real deep in his rotation. So we probably go through this every year. And that is he going to go deeper onto the bench? And just me standing there watching practice, I'm thinking, well, they got a lot of guys that could give them some minutes. And so we'll see what happens early on. They got to play those 3 games in 3 days in the Bahamas fairly early in the season, and that's when your bench really comes to be a major factor. So they'll be good. I have no idea, how good until we start seeing some outside competition. As you guys know, Big 12, toughest conference in college basketball. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what life is like on the road in the Big 12. Because there's going to be more than 3,000 fans in every arena that we go to.
No offense to some of those Pac-12 schools. All right, finally, last one for you, Brian. In Arizona, we had a big loss the other day. Al McCoy passed away, a wonderful announcer for the Suns for many, many years and other Phoenix sports. Did you ever come in contact with him, and just any memories about Al McCoy that you may have?
Well, I met him once at a conference up in Phoenix. It was very brief. It was probably just a couple of years after I moved to Tucson. That was back in 1980. But I just remember I listened to him as often as I could. The games were on a station down here in Tucson. And as a young broadcaster at that time, it's one of those guys that you want to listen to because he was incredibly professional, consistent, prepared, a great delivery, everything that you want to be as a young announcer. Al McCoy was it. And so I learned so much from listening to guys like him. And so, just invaluable. I'm sorry I never got a chance to tell him that. Like I said, when I met him just briefly, it was early on. I hadn't even started doing play-by-play at Arizona at that point. It was just kind of, a goal of mine. So I can thank him now and just say that he's helped me a lot. And I think I tell young broadcasters that all the time. I say, listen to as many guys as you can, but when you find a guy like Al McCoy to listen to, pay attention because he's one of the best.
Shane, do you have any Al McCoy stories that you?
I actually got a chance to meet him once before I was in the media. Went to a Suns game, got picture taken on the court afterwards, and then I brought the book that Al McCoy wrote, The Real McCoy, just in case I had a chance for him to autograph it. And so I went over, and just because he was still at his spot by courtside, wrapping up post game, and so he signed the book for me. He was very nice about it, and so he's a voice of my childhood, and I wish that he had a chance to call a championship because no one deserved it more than him. But no, he's a legend, and ran into him a few times afterwards when I was with the media. Good friend with Craig Fouey at ABC 15, who I had a chance to work with a lot. So no, he will be I said before we started, Al and Brian who's with us, and then Tim Healy at ASU, all legends in their own right, and Al will be very deeply missed.
I met him a few times, but and he's a class act and a true gentleman. But I have to tell you, the last time that I saw him was at Suns Media Day in 2019, and Frank Kaminsky was standing right in front of me. And John Bloom, who I know, who's now the voice of the Suns, pointed out, he says, with Al standing there and me and Bloom, he says, Eric, what do you think of that guy over there? I said, John, too soon. And that we were only a few years removed from that. Brian, always great to talk with you. You are a legend, as Shane said. You are the Al McCoy of U of A, and we are always grateful to have you on Wildcat Country, and we'll certainly talk to you again soon.
Well, that's the highest compliment you could be paid. I appreciate that, guys.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
All right, Shane, it is time for our picks segment. I am so excited to have our buddy Mike Kintner, the GM at Harrah's Auction Casino, on with us to make some picks for the first time this season. Mike, we had you on in late August. Welcome back. Just before we get going on picks, just your thoughts on what you've seen from Arizona through the first 3 weeks. Are you less optimistic, about the same, more optimistic?
Maybe a little. Well, first off, hey guys, good to see you. Been following along pretty closely. Less optimistic on the Arizona Wildcats. A lot of season left, a lot of games left. Hopefully they can find a way to get it together. NAU game, obviously a little disappointing. K-State as well, but first road game, Big 12 in Kansas, in Manhattan, Kansas. It was a tough one. I think when I was on last time, we talked about that game a little bit, and I was like, if they could steal one there. Obviously, that didn't happen. But then, it's tough to make, any sense of it with then K-State going out and getting dominated by BYU. So, it'll be really interesting to see how it all plays out. Obviously, always rooting for the guys, always wanting them to win. But we're here to talk picks, try to make some money, and we're betting against the spread, right?
That's right. So if you want to go and make some money, go to Harrah's Auction Casino. They have a sports book on site, and it is a Caesars Sportsbook, and you can get all the great Caesars lines. Walk up to their, the machine there and do it, the kiosk, and they'll make it easy on yourself. That's what I always do. Leave the tellers alone. Just go and make your bets yourself and then cash them after that. All right, here we go. Upset special. Shane, we'll start with you. What are you going with this week?
Well, I got to get one of these right eventually. As much as fans aren't going to like it, they're not going to like a couple picks, at least in this segment. I'm going to take Washington as a 3-point underdog at Rutgers on Friday night. Washington's offense is kind of meh, but its defense has been pretty good. Rutgers is 3-0, but I think they're due for a loss, so I will reluctantly take Jed Fish's guys to win.
It's a bad pick, Shane. I love Rutgers in this matchup. Mike, what do you got?
Well, we obviously didn't talk about it beforehand or whatever, but I scoured. I was going to try to keep it in the Big 12. Didn't like either of those games. It was like, at TCU at Kansas or Cincinnati, and I was really struggling with them. So I have Washington. I had them at plus 2.5 at Rutgers. So am I allowed to pick the same one that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Because you get one.
That's not a good sign, Mike. But yes, you are allowed to do it.
I was like, I think Rutgers kind of, what are they? The perennial doormat. So we'll see if they're the real deal or not.
They're the Vanderbilt of the Big Ten.
And once again, I should probably give standings here. You get 1 point for a spread pick, 1 point for an upset special cover, 1 point if they win the game outright, and 2 points for Arizona's game. So the guests on the show are beating Shane and myself. You
don't have to mention the points, Eric. That's okay. You can just move on.
I'm at 19. Shane's a few back from that. Okay. I'm going with Western Kentucky plus 12.5 against Boston College. You guys, you can have your Washingtons. They're not going to win outright. How about Western Kentucky? Now, last week on my Sportsline show, I gave out James Madison. They were a little more than 3-1 underdog at North Carolina. I wish I'd given it out on this show. They won the game outright. Western Kentucky, watch out. I think they can win in Boston College. All right, let's start in the Big 12. Two teams that badly need a victory. We have Oklahoma State at Kansas State. The line is now 4.5 for Kansas State. 4.5. I don't know if that makes a difference. Shane, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I'm still not a K-State believer, especially if they got trounced at BYU. I know that they whooped Arizona, but I think that was unfortunately more of a product of Arizona's struggles than anything else. So I like K-State to not only cover, but win in Manhattan.
Interesting. Mike?
Yeah, I don't know if this is good for me because I'm with Shane again. I'm Oklahoma State plus 4.5, and looking at Shane with a total of 16 wins so far this season. I might need to start changing some of these.
Yeah, it's not good. Mike.
Yeah, I don't know what to make it. I don't know what to make a K-State just yet. So hopefully Oklahoma State can cover that 4.5.
Another double, not so fast for you guys. Here's a stat for you. Kansas State surrendering 83.3 yards on the ground. Oklahoma State more than 180 yards rushing every game. That's going to be the difference. Kansas State wins and covers. I have it by 8. All right, here's another one. So BYU went and trounced Kansas State last week, and yet they didn't even put up 300 total yards. Now they're going to play at Baylor, who's a 3-point favorite, and Baylor had a win in Colorado in the bag, and then they lost on a Hail Mary, and then getting.
You just knew there was going to be some BS at the end of that game, didn't you? You just knew it was going to happen.
It was a great throw by Shedeur, but nonetheless,
ridiculous.
All right, I'm going to take Baylor. I think Baylor wins this game by a touchdown or so. So I think BYU is about to get what they probably deserve at this point. Great start, Mike. What about you?
Yeah, normally I'd probably go against the mass betting public, but 73% of the tickets money line are on BYU, and 73% of the tickets against the spread are on BYU, and I kind of like it. So I think I'm picking BYU plus 3, taking the points.
Okay, Shane.
All right, Mike, I'm going to make you happy because I'm going to take Baylor to win and cover. BYU's been impressive. They're not that good. They're going on the road against the Baylor team. It's going to be a little PO'd after what happened in Boulder. I think BYU comes down to earth a bit, and Baylor wins and covers.
This is a tough game here to pick. Louisville at Notre Dame, both are ranked. Notre Dame is -5. Are you a believer, Shane?
You know what? I'm going to take Louisville. I'm still not over Notre Dame's loss to Northern Illinois, especially after Northern Illinois followed that up with a loss to Buffalo. I know it's kind of difficult to compare. Well, this team lost to this team and so on, but still, that's not good. Louisville really hasn't been tested yet, but they've looked pretty good so far. I'm going to take Louisville to either win or suffer a very close loss. So I'm going to take them to cover.
All right, Mike, how about you?
Taking the Irish, Notre Dame -5. So I think they're going to get things cranked up and running. I'm with the public slightly here. 59% of the tickets against the spread are on Notre Dame.
Yeah, this is a really tough game for me to pick. I don't know what to do here. I capped it at Notre Dame -6. So I'll hesitatingly, if that's even a word, take Notre Dame -5. All right, it's kind of a weird line. UCF, Central Florida, 14.5-point favorite at home against Colorado. I think Colorado's due to get the doors blown off them, just like they were at Nebraska. I could see this being a 35-17 game. I like UCF with the point. Shane?
Yeah, I do too. Colorado's not that good. Fans rush the field after needing a Hail Mary and overtime to beat Baylor.
Pathetic.
Are you kidding me? I'm sure their confidence is sky high, and they're about to get humbled again, just like you said they did at Nebraska. So I think UCF improves to 4-0 and wins easily.
Mike?
I hate laying 14.5 points. Usually 54% of the tickets against the spread are on Colorado, but I agree with you guys. I'm going with UCF.
Yeah, the public is going to be on Colorado just about every game because of the Dion factor. That's what it's all about. That's why we fade the public sometimes, and we take UCF. All right, Illinois is an 18-point underdog despite being ranked and winning on the road at Nebraska. They're going into Happy Valley and taking on Penn State. Plus 18, Shane. Is that too many points?
I don't think so. I think my theme for this week is ranked teams crashing back down to earth. And I think that's what happens to Illinois as well. I don't think they're quite ready to play with the big boys yet. I think Penn State wins by at least 3 touchdowns at home.
Wow. Mike?
Yeah, I like Penn State. Another one, that's a lot of points, minus 18.5. Almost 90% of the money line tickets are on Penn State. And 86% of the tickets against the spread are on Illinois. So kind of a bit of a toss-up. Public doesn't like that many points either. But yeah, I think Penn State, like you said.
Another double, not so fast. Give me Illinois. They're playing hard. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game, and I think they can keep it within a couple of touchdowns and a field goal. So yeah, give me that plus 18 there. All right. So Washington State, I don't know if y'all stayed up on Friday night to watch that. It would double overtime against San Jose State, a complete crap show. Another word I'd probably use for it, but we are a family show. And they won 54-52 over Brent Brennan's former squad. Now they have to go to Boise State, who's a 7-point favorite. Shane, I'll start with you.
Yeah, Washington State's not ranked, but they are 4-0, so this kind of continues with my theme. Cougar's story has been awesome so far. Obviously, we love the win against Washington. Beating Boise State on the road or even staying within a touchdown, I think is just too big a hill to climb. So I think Boise State wins and covers.
Mike?
I'm going with Washington State. I think hopefully their dream season can continue. I'm seeing them right now plus 7.5 with about almost 70% of the tickets against the spread with Washington State. So I'm going with the public here.
I think Boise State is going to run, and I don't think Washington State's going to have an answer for Ashton Jeanty, who is probably the best running back in college football. Could get 2,000 yards, might even get a backdoor invite to the Heisman ceremony. From what I saw from the Cougars defense last week, not pretty. I'm going to take Boise State to win this game by double digits. All right, biggest game of the early season. Georgia is a 2-point favorite at Alabama. All right, this line I've seen anywhere between 1.5 and 2.5 will settle on 2. Georgia, I like them. I think they're going to win. Now, Alabama has won 8 of the last 9 meetings, the one time being that Georgia won the national championship game a couple of years ago. But Nick Saban is gone and Kalen DeBoer is in. I think we all know that because if not, Jed Fish would still be coaching at Arizona. So, Mike, we'll start with you. What do you think?
Yeah, you're right. This is a huge game, right? So big time at home, Alabama. They've been putting up a lot of points. Obviously, not against Georgia, but it's in the public on this one. It's a bit of a toss up. I mean, it's literally the money line tickets is 50-50, and against the spread, the public likes Georgia. 58% of the tickets are on Georgia. So, but I'll be a homer. I'm gonna go with Alabama getting 2.5 at home and take Bama to win.
Okay, Shane, how about you?
Yeah, Alabama looked great at Wisconsin, but I just need to see them beat a great team under Kalen DeBoer before I can pick them in this kind of game. That's all. Jalen Milroe's been fantastic. Georgia's got an equally good quarterback. I think it's going to be as good a game as advertised, but I think Georgia wins by at least a field goal.
Georgia has not given up a defensive touchdown, has not given up a touchdown to their opponents in their last 4 games. It's a wild stat. They'll give up at least 1 to Alabama. I still think they cover and win this game by a touchdown or more. Okay. And finally, let's go to Salt Lake City late on Saturday night. Well, not as late as next week's game, but Utah's a 12.5-point favorite against Arizona. Now, we talked about this earlier in the show, Shane. Last year, Jedfish ran it up, albeit Kyle Whittingham was calling timeouts. You can factor that in however you want. I'm actually going to go first on this one and let you guys go last. My score prediction is Utah 33, Arizona 17. I just don't have faith in the Arizona defense to shut down this Utah running game. I think they'll fare okay. I'm not sure if Cam Rising will play. Wilson, the freshman Wilson, Zach Wilson's brother, has been solid for them, but I just don't know if Arizona can shut down Utah's running game, and I don't know if they can generate enough points. I hope I'm wrong. I hope you guys are more optimistic. I have no idea where you stand. Mike, you're next.
Yeah, man. Public loves Utah in this game. 96% of the money line bets on Utah, which I think kind of makes sense here. And then 78% against the spread. I'm laying the points. Utah, minus 12.5. And my score prediction would be Utah 35, Arizona 14 up there. I think you're right. I think they remember last year and us running it up. Was it 42-18? I think there's gonna be a little payback coming our way.
All right. Shane, we've talked about this. The season starts next week, as far as I'm concerned. We knew this was how it was going to play out. So anything that happens good this week is kind of a bonus, the way I look at it. Will something good happen in Salt Lake City?
That is a nice way to look at it. I do think things will get better for Arizona at some point this season, but I don't think that begins this week. I think the biggest issue on the field anyway for Arizona is the cohesiveness of the offensive line. And hopefully everyone's healthy and ready to go this week. But I think it's going to take a while to get some continuity there. I don't see Noah Fafita having much time to throw against Utah's defense. I'm not sure it matters who starts for a quarterback for Utah. Like you said, the running game is going to be trouble, and Arizona struggled there. Arizona's got tackling problems, and they can't generate turnovers either. The turnover sword hasn't seen much use so far this year. I think Utah scores enough points off turnovers to cover in itself. I'm going to go Utah 41, Arizona 17.
Shane, I was saving you for last because I thought you would be the most optimistic here.
Are you new?
I thought. I really thought. No, I'm kidding. Listen, we know. Listen, this game we had talked about it with you a month ago, Mike. We knew it was going to be tough. I want to see Arizona improve off the bye. If they do, and we're wrong, glad to be wrong. No doubt about that.
And people are welcome to rub it in our faces on social media. I would absolutely love for that to happen. Believe me.
Absolutely.
Mike, anything else you want to share? Harrah's auction. Shane and I hopefully will be out there very soon. Going to talk about that later this week. But just anything you want to give a shout out or let anyone know in our audience?
No, it's been a pretty wild betting season, both NFL and college to start, right? So a lot of games going unpredictable, that sort of stuff. So lots of opportunity, lots of fun. So come on down and see us. Down or up the 347, depending on which way you're coming to us from Tucson or Phoenix. Lots of wonderful gaming, dining, and hospitality offerings for you. So,
and a great place to stop for the night if you have an 8 p.m. kickoff and you have to drive to and from Phoenix, right?
Good point. Yep, great point. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mike, I might need to book that hotel reservation for next Saturday. I hate these 8 p.m. games. Well, thank you so much for joining us. The next time you go to Harrah's auction and you see a big tower being built, that's from the NFL winnings that they've gotten from the public over the last 3 weeks, because it has been ugly. That sport is really tough to bet. College, we have a better beat on it, but not as good as Shane and I did last year. We had a better, we're doing better. So we'll see. Hopefully, it was nice when Arizona was covering every week too. That made life a bit easier. But nonetheless, thanks to Brian Jeffries for joining us, to Mike Kintner, for Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening, and as always, bear down.